Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining our side event on the opportunities and constraints to dispose of ODS refrigerant remnant stockpiles. And thank you for spending a couple of hours of your evening after a long day with us. So we appreciate you coming. My name is Maria Jose Gutierrez. I'm the Senior Director of International Programs for Tradewater, and I'm happy to welcome you all today. So let me introduce our agenda for the side event. If technology collaborates with me. There. Okay, so we are going to start with an introduction to the challenges ahead and solution opportunities by Gabe Plotkin, the COO, Chief Operation Officer and co-founder of Tradewater. Then we will have a presentation on the opportunities and challenges for sustainable management of ODS and HFC banks by Ellen Mitchell, Head of the Climate and Ozone Protection Alliance, COPA Secretariat from GIZ. And then we'll have participation from, well, we'll see a project in Thailand that we've been developing around destroying some remnant stockpiles. So we will see a short video that we prepared of that project and the project happening in Thailand. And then we'll have a presentation by Dr. Phumsak Chanchampi, the Senior Director of Environmental Health and Safety and Environmental Services Development from Waste Management CM, WMS. And then we'll have some space for questions and answers at the end, and all are welcome. So I'll start by giving word to Gabe Plotkin. As I said, he's the Chief Operations Officer and co-founder of Tradewater. So I'll give it up to him.
Thank you, Marco. And thank you all. I know for many of you, it's been a long day or two of travel and then sessions. And anyway, appreciate you taking some time and joining us this evening. My slides. So Tradewater is a mission-based company. We're headquartered in Chicago and also in Costa Rica and operating around the world. Our mission is to improve the environment and create economic opportunity through the collection, control, and destruction of potent, high-impact greenhouse gases. In particular, we focus on methane, and as far as this crowd is concerned, ozone-depleting substances, CFCs and HCFCs, which I do not need to tell you are among the most potent greenhouse gases that have ever been created. We do this work to identify, collect, and destroy remnant stockpiles of ozone-depleting substances by leveraging the carbon markets. This is a private, for-profit endeavor that we are engaged in, and we use carbon markets to make it all possible. We were started and born out of the California cap-and-trade regulation, which created a compliance market where people essentially have to pay for their emissions, including the purchase of offsets. And there was a protocol that said if you collect and destroy ODS, you get carbon credits. And so we started to gather and look for old remnant stockpiles of CFCs in the US. And we've been doing that for about 9 years now and generating over 5 million tons of carbon offset credits from our work in the United States. Internationally, we do this work by generating carbon credits that we sell into the voluntary market. These are individuals and corporations with net zero commitments who believe in the additionality and the permanence of the work that we're doing and the carbon credits that result from this hard work. This work that we've engaged on has led us on what we call a global scavenger hunt. There is no map that tells you where remnant stockpiles of ozone-depleting substances may sit. There is no little breadcrumbs that people have left out there. But there are clues, and there are some partners. Some people like you, ozone officers, often have some information about where remnant stockpiles might be. Certain destruction technologies, waste managers have their hands on these, manufacturers, even the internet. We are always seeking help in this hunt for remnant stockpiles. When we go on this scavenger hunt, often we run into people who say, interesting idea, love that you're all about it, but we haven't made these gases in decades. There are no CFCs left in the world. The last R12 is gone. It's true, there are not a lot of these left, but recent studies out of MIT suggest that the CO2 equivalent of remaining banks of CFCs between 9 and 11 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. And what I can tell you, despite people having a view that mostly the CFCs are gone, is that our hunt has turned up many stocks all over the world in a wide variety of places. And I'm just going to take you on a quick little journey. First one, our friends in Ghana. R12, 2018. This is an importer who imported CFCs before the phase out went into effect, but imported too much and had stockpiles and no market for them. We were able to collect those and destroy those. In a country in Southern Africa, there are private parties who have their hands on old, rusting outdoor cylinders leaking of R12 that they've surrendered to the government, seeking help with. Those need to be destroyed. In North Africa, there's a government that has a seized cargo container full of mixed CFCs, ozone-depleting substance, and other refrigerant gas in need of destruction. In Honduras, a private party, similarly in the manufacturing business, I believe, had more than they needed, and the market dries up. All of this left over, we were able to collect it, ship it to France, and have it destroyed. In the Dominican Republic, again, private parties collecting this material. This is virgin stuff. There's also material coming out of equipment turned over to the government because there's no use for it anymore. We were able to find it, collect it, and have it destroyed. In Argentina, believe it or not, you can walk in Buenos Aires, you can go into stores, and you can buy cylinders of R12. And we take a little rod in there, you can test it. It's R12 in there. In Central America, there's a training school working with folks to teach them how to handle refrigerants safely, and they have a storeroom full of R12 that needs to be destroyed. Another country in South America, this is a waste handler who responsibly takes in all of these refrigerant gases at the end of their life, but they're mixed. You guys know how hard it is to keep these things separately. So these are all cylinders of mix, lots of CFCs, but HCFCs and HFCs, and they don't have destruction capacity. So it sits there, and people are paying them to store it, and they're running out of storage containers. In Southeast Asia, another seized government stockpile. You'll see some 134A there, but guess what? It's not. It's R12 hidden inside of those, and that's part of why it has been seized. And then you'll learn a little bit more about this, but in Thailand, confiscated material that's been there for well over a decade. Lots and lots of material in need of destruction. You're going to hear more about that story tonight. These are some of the ways in which we have been, one more. And in Saudi Arabia, these are other people we work with, other partners besides waste managers include reclaimers and others in the distribution of refrigerants who maybe come across, for a variety of different reasons, old CFCs. And those, in fact, are CFCs in Saudi Arabia in need of an end-of-life solution. Finding all of this is hard, but also there are significant barriers to the destruction once you find it. And this is where we think we can come in and help. Among the barriers that we see are limited destruction capacity. There is not a lot of facilities around the world that are capable of destroying this. Even places that have technology, rotary kiln incinerators, they don't necessarily have the feed lines or the SEMS, the ability to manufacture, or the testing that's done to make them able to handle the highly fluorinated ozone-depleting substances. International transport, if you look at all the different places we just shared, very few of them have in-country destruction capacity. So you have to move this stuff, and as most of you know, it gets declared a hazardous waste if you want to destroy it, which means it has to move under the Basel Convention, which means you need permission of every single place it goes, which means you need a boat to go there, which means you don't need supply chain problems like we're facing today that make it impossible to find a boat to move things, let alone hazardous waste on a boat. There's only a few certified laboratories. Before we destroy this stuff, in order to get carbon credits to finance this work, we need a ISO certified or AHRI certified laboratory. Believe it or not, there's only a couple of those around the world. And so you end up sending material from one country to a lab in another country to do that, which also has its own logistical hurdles. There's very little financing. As you guys know, under the Montreal Protocol, once in a while, there are pilot projects where you can get some money to destroy some of these refrigerants at end of life, but for the most part, there is not financing. And that, of course, is the most difficult barrier of all. Finding this stuff, collecting it, moving it, paying for it to be destroyed if you can find a place. It's an expensive undertaking. And of course, it requires cooperation. You guys know, working in the government or with government, that you need the cooperation of ozone office, import and export authorities, waste management authorities, climate change offices to understand what it means to be dealing in carbon offset credits, as well as the owners of this material. And to get all of those stars to align can be a very big challenge. What I'd like to share here, and you're going to hear about a little bit more, is that Tradewater has overcome in a lot of these situations that I showed before, these barriers. We have developed partners that have destruction technology, and we are working with them to develop and increase that destruction capacity so they can handle these refrigerants. We should really say developing expertise. But once you've done a few of these projects on the international transport, you learn what it takes to get through the Basel Convention process. You learn who are the shippers who can handle this material, and we have developed that. We've identified laboratories that work. Most importantly, we bring carbon credit financing to this work. We have gone out and told the gospel of why these carbon credits are among the most important in the world. They are additional, they are permanent, they are easily qualified. If we don't do this work, nobody destroys this refrigerant because it's a pain in the butt and it's expensive. And so you have to be able to leverage the carbon markets, and we've been persuading people to do that. So when we come in and help people find solutions for these remnant stockpiles, we finance the work, and we work to build those bridges. We're going to tell a story through this video of the work we're doing in Thailand, which is the story of cooperation and how everyone came together to collaborate to overcome the barriers that I identified. And it's the story that we're happy to replicate with anyone else in this room who's aware of some remnant stockpiles and is interested in working with us to overcome all these barriers. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Gabe. Next up, so we've heard about some of the work that the Tradewater is doing and the challenges faced and how we're attempting to solve for those around the world. Next up, I'd like to invite Ellen Mitchell. As I said, she's the head of the Secretariat of the Climate and Ozone Protection Alliance, COPA, who you can, well, she'll tell you about that as well, but you can hear more about COPA tomorrow, Wednesday at a side event in the evening slot as well. And she's from GIZ, so I'll give it up to you, please.
Thanks a lot, Maria. Thank you for having me. Thanks for being here this evening. And I would actually talk very much in the same lines that you have just heard, so I will confirm, not contradict. I'm sure for everyone who's here in the room, it's clear the importance of dealing with ODS and HFC banks. So we're looking at the topic of end of life cycle management, and this is also the topic that the Climate and Ozone Protection Alliance has been created to be treating this in a partnership approach. And I will just give you a few insights here. Thanks. So this probably also does not come as amazing news, but just to explain why this alliance has been set up. So the amounts of ODS and HFCs, as you know, they amount to huge numbers per year, and it's actually increasing in the way that you see more and more HFCs coming in this graph due to ODS not being permitted anymore. The numbers there are decreasing, but decreasing actually means, unfortunately, that it's going, if it's not properly treated, into the atmosphere, which of course is a very negative development. If you just click. So here, just to illustrate, sorry, I can do this. So with the GIZ study, actually, it was found out that it's about 1.5 gigatons CO2 equivalent that are annually being emitted from those banks. And this is an equivalent to about 441 coal power plants. So what also has been discovered, or probably also known to most of you, is the gap that the international community is working on the use, and also with the Montreal Protocol and also the Kigali Amendment, looking at that no further ODS substances will be produced, but we have the existing ones, and this is the challenge because this is not covered under the existing agreements, and therefore also it is not being treated consistently yet or holistically, not in all the countries yet. And what it needs to actually make this a successful endeavor are the points that you see. We think it needs actually a suitable set of policy measures that includes laws and regulations, but also fiscal and other non-regulatory measures. It needs, it was also mentioned, it's a question of funding, so a sustainable financing mechanism, also an effective collection mechanism, that Tradewater doesn't have to go around and search for it, but that it's actually knowledge available, and also not only the knowledge available, but it's being collected properly. And then after the collection, of course, also it needs a functioning reclamation and destruction infrastructure. So this is where the Climate and Ozone Protection Alliance wants to come in. It wants to work with partner countries and diverse actors across private and public sectors to advance those holistic solutions. And other partners that we are inviting to join the alliance include academia and international organizations. And with those partners, we actually want to move forward on this topic so that the cooling sector will be working towards sustainable refrigerant management. This alliance has been initiated by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. It is implemented by GIZ jointly with UNIDO, that we have also here in the room present with us, and UNDP. So how are we as COPA looking to fulfill this vision? It's actually working through pilots, working through also setting up thematic working groups and studies, and with the intention to raise global awareness on the topic of ODS and HFC banks beyond this room, to bring together all relevant actors, as already mentioned, from private to public to academia, and also to include finance experts, to advance holistic solutions to reduce the ODC and HFC banks, and also to promote in general a global shift to sustainable refrigerant management. So even though COPA has been created recently, we have already started to work in 2 working groups. It's planned to set up at least 4, but potentially or possibly also, if there are more partners and if there's interest for other working groups, this can also be enlarged. So those thematic working groups that we have already started, you see in the middle, it's on the technology solutions for ODS and HFC recovery, reclamation and destruction, and also for financing mechanisms, for greenhouse gas mitigation measures in the ODS and HFC banks. And the 2 that are going to follow is the one on policy framework for effective bank management, and the implementation models for ODS and HFC end-of-life management. Here, actually putting theory or also all the preparatory work into practice, and also demonstrating solutions through pilots in partnering countries. That's fine, yeah. So actually we would like to invite you, for those who are not yet, luckily we have some with us here, Tradewater. Also, I see Aegis to become members in this international alliance. Actually, we're looking for partners, for the ones who already are quite advanced in addressing this end of life cycle management, but also for the ones who are not that advanced yet. We want to encourage international cooperation here, experience exchange, taking the lessons learned from the countries that have already moved forward, and see also how this can be adapted to the countries where maybe not all the infrastructures and all the procedures and methodologies are in place yet in a very extended way. So what would be your benefits if you want to become a member with us? Firstly, membership is free of charge. But also we think there are many networking opportunities. All members have the chance, as I said, it's a recently created alliance, to also shape the future of this alliance, to decide jointly with us where are we going, in which direction are we going to focus on, where are the main concerns, issues, maybe also opportunities. And then also you will have, or members will have early access to publications, newsletters and events. And also there will be support given, and hopefully also by some members support provided in designing and implementing mitigation actions. So COPA is actually open to countries, and as mentioned at the beginning, also to organizations that are willing to support this global shift to sustainable refrigerant management. And countries can be partner countries, as also I said before, that are already advanced, that want to contribute to this international experience change, and it can be also countries that are willing to implement pilot projects and that are looking for some of this expertise that might not be present in the country yet. So that will be all for now for me. Thanks to Maria, she already mentioned, we also have a separate side event where we will give a bit more insight and also share first country experience. This will be on Wednesday evening at 6. Thank you. And for contacts, there's one more slide. You may go to the website to see it, and you may also, of course, address me or my colleague Christine, who is also here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ellen, for that great presentation. Sharing all, the gaps that we agree on the table exist and that we're all trying to solve. And that invitation really to all here present to join in on that action to help solve as well. Next up, we'd like to present a little bit about our project in Thailand. So first, I want to show you all a video, and bear with me if I don't get the technology right the first time, but I hope I do. Okay, just continue. Okay. Hope this works. Sorry. Let me just wait. Okay.
The Customs Department contacted us at the IW to talk about confiscated materials, which are refrigerants, CFCs mainly, and they ask how they can dispose of such substances or destroy them in a proper manner. And since the DIW is the lead agency under the Montreal Protocol, we have contacted the World Bank to identify funding sources and options and channels in which such substances can be destroyed properly.
We learned from the World Bank's representative at the time, Kun Viraj Runtiem, that Thailand had a confiscated stockpile that was sitting from over 10 years ago somewhere in many warehouses that needed a solution.
The 4 low carbon project has been started in our company since 10 years ago, 2012. We got the inquiry from Department of Industrial Works to provide the service for Customs Department. However, in that time, we faced the difficulty in terms of the financial support.
Tradewater has offered a partnership with us, with Customs, with WMS, and IEAT to work together in this public-private relationship to make sure that we can finance the destruction and ensure that these refrigerants meet destruction at the end of life. Tradewater does this work by following protocols. These protocols make sure that all of the refrigerant that people are collected is handled in a safe manner, complies with all the applicable rules and regulations, and is destroyed to greater than 99.99%. And our role in this project, as in many projects that we do, is to ensure that those steps all happen and that the end-of-life destruction of this material is done in the safest and most effective manner.
Tradewater will support the financial to the project to destroy the fluorocarbon that I think would be the largest stockpile in our countries.
Cylinders will move from the custom storage facilities to this warehouse. Each cylinder will be identified, weighed, and recorded. The gas from all 10,000 cylinders will move into a large ISO tank. The aggregated volume will be sampled to determine the concentration of gas. It will then move to the WMS facility where destruction will commence.
All the waste before it can come to our company, it will be analyzed, the concentration, and we check whether we can receive it. And the trucks will come to this weight bridge and it will be waste.
Feeding into our incinerator to burn. You can see our incinerator at the back. We can burn it together with other general waste that we burn. And then after we burn, we have to control the temperature to make sure that all the waste that burn together with the CFC is already burned. And before we doing this thing, we have to do the environmental impact assessment to make sure that every activity is compliant with laws and regulations and environmental friendly.
We've also been meeting with the different officials and celebrating the beginning of this project as well, in customs as in the warehouse, and witnessing what it all will entail. The Thailand stockpile that we will be destroying is a very large one, so it will take a long time to destroy because of the capacity of destruction, which means it will take a little over a year, like close to a year and a half, to destroy it all. The end of this project will happen when we're able to destroy all of the refrigerant that we know to exist in Thailand.
In Thailand, we also received this mission to cover, collect, and try to destroy the greenhouse gas properly. Not only the refrigerant, but also other gas as well. This project is quite, useful in order to complete our mission, and I think it's helpful.
All of the parties were very interested in making this happen, and that was key, because we could all collaborate in finding that right path, even though we didn't necessarily always know what the next steps should be, and we took some steps that weren't in the right direction. We could all collaborate to make it happen, and that was the most important part.
It's a big victory for the environment and an example of what can be accomplished through collaboration, persistence, and the commitment of many dedicated people.
Thank you very much. And finally, I'd like, last but not least, certainly not least, we have Dr. Poonsak, let me get this right, Dr. Poonsak Chanchampi, the Senior Director of EHS and Environmental Development at WMS, Waste Management CM, the destruction facility we're using in Thailand, to present a little bit from their perspective, from a destruction facility perspective, what it is like to participate in this project. So we have him all the way from Thailand at his 5:30 in the morning. And let me just try and get him on here. Dr. Punsak, can you hear us? This is actually
Yes.
him in the speaker. Okay, let me pull up his slides.
Okay.
There
Yes.
he is. Okay, just 1 second. Let me pull up your slides. There you go. Dr. Punsak, the floor is all yours. And let me know when you want to switch slides, please.
Okay. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, the organizer, as well as the Tradewater that give me an opportunity to present our activities. Could you change the slide, please? Okay, thank you. DOWA is the leading industrial waste management company in Japan. Recently, we operate more than 8 incinerators to handle industrial waste management, as well as the refrigerant destruction. Now, DOWA already expand the business to Southeast Asia, and Thailand is the second country that DOWA start refrigerant management business in 2018. After Thailand, Singapore and Indonesia, who are operating incinerator system, will be the next country to conduct the refrigerant destruction business. Could you change the slide, please? Thank you. This slide will show the facility that we use to destruct the refrigerant. We call the BPEC Bangpu Environmental Complex, which is the subsidiary of WBS. BPEC operate incinerator for hazardous and non-hazardous waste treatment. With regard to refrigerant, we got the license to destruct the refrigerant 0.9 tons per day. The BPEC is located around 30 kilometers south of Bangkok. With regard to the destruction that I show you in the red letters, BPEC will feed the refrigerant to the secondary combustion chamber, which maintain temperature more than 850 degrees Celsius. The facility is fully equipped with the state-of-the-art full gas treatment system. And also on your left-hand side, you can see that this facility also produce the electricity to 1.6 megawatt steam turbine generators. Could you change the slide, please? This slide will show the destruction quantity that BPEC has been done so far. We start in 2018 that we got the fully permitted by the government. The destruction volume has been increased rapidly from 6 tons per year in 2019 to 57 in 2021, and we expect to reach 60 tons per year in this year. Thanks to Tradewater to support the destruction cost. Next year, we think that the quantity will increase to around 200 tons per year. Please note that around 2/3 come from the seized ODS from Custom Department and the routine refrigerants account for the rest. Could you change the slide, please? This slide will show the destruction procedure starting from the inventory in the custom department. The CFC will ship to our warehouse. And from that, we will transfer from small cylinders to the ISO tank. Once the ISO tank full, we will ship to BPEC for destructions. The link feeding, BPEC shall monitor the flue gas in order to meet with Thailand emission standard of hazardous waste incinerators. The parameter that we have to monitor are oxide of sulfur, oxide of nitrogen, and hydrogen chloride. Moreover, we have to control the destruction removal efficiency to reach 99.99%. So this is our process to destruct the refrigerant in our facilities. Could you pass to the next slides? Yes, this is the final slides that I think that all of challenge actually are relevant. Even though the number of refrigerant destruction show rapidly increase in our presentation, we still estimate that the destruction volume account only 1% of the total usage volume. As a result, government shall support to encourage ODS taking back system. In addition, I think we are facing the financial obstruction. The support from carbon trading should be taken into consideration as a key to solve such obstruction. Thirdly, the effective taking back system, especially from municipal e-waste taking back system, should be considered. As our marketing number, this volume account more than, I think, 70% of the users refrigerants. If we have the proper taking back system, we are quite sure that we can reduce the carbon emissions dramatically. Yes, thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Punsak. I hope you heard that applause for you.
Yes, I heard that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing from the destruction facility perspective what it is like to participate in these kinds of projects and what it is you have to account for and take care of when you do the destruction process. I'm gonna stop sharing the slides now so that we can move on to that we'll keep showing you. If you wanna keep the camera on, Dr. Punsak, so we can have the full panel here, you through the video, so I can, thank you. So I can open it up for any questions from the audience. If you have any questions or comments, please.
Can I ask just a quick question? How is this reported under the Montreal Protocol? If it's within Thailand, I can see it's all around the country, but you sort of export it from, say, Ghana, I think it's to France. Who reports what?
A very good question. Thank you.
I can take that question by saying, I honestly don't know. This is something that we talk about, absolutely. And of course, in order to move this material, we're working with the ozone offices in both countries, as well as those parties administering the Basel Convention along the way. So we've talked about this with different implementing agencies and things to think about how does this work on the accounting. I honestly don't know how that results and who takes it at the end, but what I can say is it's reported clearly to the governments, and how that rolls up to Montreal protocols on them.
There was another question back there.
Yes, thank you for the slide and good information. So two questions. One, what is the cost for destruction of a kilogram of, whether it be CFC or whatever? Second question is, and I've been in this regime for 30 years, why is it that the chemical manufacturers are never held accountable, never contribute, never paid for destruction? Their comment, the last comment from Thailand was government should take more action, and maybe that's true. Maybe they should regulate the people, the companies, the manufacturers of refrigerants who have actually created this scenario to fund the destruction process instead of coming back to government to pay for it. So in some sort of way, it should be stewardship from those who have created it, cradled the grade, and I don't see that.
Thank you for the two very good questions. I'm going to start with the second one. Both of you maybe want to comment?
I think the second one is easier for me. I can only totally agree. I think at the end of the day, what should be the plan is actually to work towards an extended producer responsibility, to include these costs at the very beginning, and to make the ones that produce these chemicals also responsible to think through and pay for all the costs associated throughout the whole lifetime and also towards the end. But it's a long way to go. So I think what was not explained in detail, but within the COPA Alliance, at least it's one of the topics we're looking to work on. And it's also part of the policy framework, how to oblige the companies voluntarily. We have the impression it hasn't come very far yet, so probably other measures are necessary to work in this direction. And the first one for the calculations. I'll pass to you.
I'm going to start with the second one. We support this as well, and you see in different countries around the world where they do implement extended producer responsibility schemes, you do have some better solutions, especially I think around HFCs and some of the programs that are at least starting now. We support everybody taking responsibility for these emissions. I think it's interesting from a carbon credit standpoint, sometimes even asking these manufacturers or these large corporations who make the appliances who have sustainability commitments, you would think that these carbon offset credits are the ones that should be part of their own portfolio of credits. Often strikes a little bit close to home, right? People don't want to admit their mess. They want to be part of something else. So it's tough. I mean, governments need to take more action, manufacturers as well. I hope someone who's listening who can do that. In terms of the cost, I will just tell you this, it ranges. There are people who provide the service here in the room and there. We've been able to negotiate different deals, but I will tell you that it ranges dramatically, depending on the country, depending on the technology involved, depending on the purpose for which the destruction is happening. It's not a cheap process. And I think that's, as we've talked about, one of the barriers to doing this. The equipment can be expensive, and then the destruction process too.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any other questions in the room? Yes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this very interesting presentation. I was wondering, do I understand correctly that you got carbon credits only for the destruction of CFC 12? And if not, and you mentioned that sometimes there could be mixes, HCFCs or others, what happens to, how do you deal with those?
I'll hand that over to you.
So thank you. Question about different species, right, of refrigerants. So there are a couple of well-established protocols that are out in the world. And the key here is additionality, right? You want to make sure that you're not destroying a refrigerant gas that by virtue of you destroying it will lead to the production of more. So that is the key fundamental issue underlying all carbon offset projects. So with CFCs, where the ban is, in effect all around, it's a no-brainer. You destroy that, no one is going to be making more. So that's the most obvious and the easiest, and there's a couple different protocols out there that you can operate under. HCFCs become a little bit more challenging because in some places, right, they're phased out and therefore destruction is completely additional. In other places, it's not. We have been working with different carbon offset registries. The American Carbon Registry, ACR, is working very hard at this. Vera as well, CAR, Climate Action Reserve, has done some work to try to figure out, and we've been really pushing them, how do we get ahead of that? If we have to wait until 2040 to start destroying HFCs for carbon credits, it will be too late. If we have to wait till 2030, 2035 to destroy all HCFCs, it will be too late. So identifying what are those circumstances where we can all feel confident that we're not producing it, right, and through the front door and then destroying it out the back door. That doesn't help anybody. So we think that one of the most obvious opportunities is mixed stuff, right? All over the world, you're lucky if you can get a recovery cylinder and a recovery machine. So why penalize people? First of all, for only having one, they should be able to put anything in there. And we know that no one is going to reclaim or reuse something that is, 20% R12, 40% R134A, and a mix of a whole bunch of other things, including oil. There is nothing to do with that but to destroy it. So it is our view that those kinds of situations are absolutely additional. If we don't destroy it, it will sit there and it will eventually leak. So we are working with two factors. One are the carbon offset registries that set these rules. And frankly, we're working with carbon credit buyers to say to some of them, and this is increasingly interesting when you get things like blockchain technology and other ways of making sure there isn't double counting of carbon credits, to say, we can make the case directly to you for the additionality of this work, and you can use it to satisfy your net zero commitments. This is different. It's a private sector. They are doing their part to pick up where, say, producers haven't. And so if we can make that case again for additionality, then we are interested in talking to people. We're not going to wait till 2040 to go after HFCs.
Any other questions? Yes, you said.
Thank you for the presentation. The question is about the transportation of the fluorinated carbon gases from the country to the facility to be destroyed. We've taken how many times regarding the European compliance with the Basel Convention, because the Basel Convention should have some concession from the country in which you export fluorinated gases and the country receives these gases. Regarding your experience, it taken much time or?
I'll let you answer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that one. Maybe I will. But yes, we have to take things through the Basel Convention, and it is a lengthy and complicated process. I will say it takes somewhere between. Well, honestly, here is the challenge. So in order to do the Basel process, I don't know how many here are familiar, you need to have a shipping route to be able to say what countries am I gonna notify that it's going to pass through. With the current shipping prices, we've had complexities finding a shipping route, especially one that's willing to take hazardous waste. And then once we do, then we start asking for notifying the different countries. In some cases, it even happens that once you start notifying the countries and while you're waiting for a response, the shipping route may change. So it is a lengthy and complex process that we've learned to be patient with. But it's supposed to take somewhere around 3 months to get a response once you get the notification sent from so the source country, the exporting country, notifies the destination country and all of the transit countries that the boat is gonna stop by. And the response time for that notification process is supposed to be around 3 months. In reality, it may take longer than that because sometimes you get positive silence and it can not necessarily be acceptable by the destination country. So it is, yes, it may take somewhere between 6 and 8 months to get the Basel process, the Basel approval to be able to start moving the material from country A to country B, which is not ideal. It is, Basel Convention was set up for good reasons, but it does in some way, unfortunately, make these efforts, good efforts that we're trying to do, a little more complicated and lengthy. And unfortunately, these, I mean, yes, we want to get these materials destroyed as soon as possible. So that is, I hope that answers your question, Mr. Yusef. But we're accumulating some experience, as Gabe said before, so we hope to help make it more efficient. Yes. Over there, you had a question?
Thank you for this really exciting event. I think it's really useful and also really exciting that we have had just today in this very zone 2 side events now on talking about life cycle refrigerant management, what happens after these refrigerants enter our systems. Back in 2018, we did a report called Search, Use, Destroy. So using your metaphor before, it's like Easter eggs of climate opportunity or threat, depending on how you see it, that need to be found and dealt with. And long for the unfinished business of Montreal Protocol, and it's really exciting to see this 2 events today. I have to plug in another one tomorrow at lunch. Once it's being there, we'll have different panelists who be on the Montreal Protocol and have domestic programs to address this, talking with industry on what needs to be done. As we launched our new report just last month, where we found that globally we are looking at a 90 billion ton opportunity in the sector. So we alluded to banks being one, just CFCs, but also, we now know through our experience of what happened at CX11, and from the Environmental Investigation Agency, we found out that there was a lot more production of CX11 that we thought, and therefore what that means is that there was a lot more bank of CX11 that was created later than we assumed they would be. So what we think is the opportunity could just be the tip of the iceberg.
Thank you for that. We've used the phrase climate bombs. Yes, these are, and I say this, you guys probably all know this, but it's worth noting that when we show you these pictures, those are not all full cylinders. They're supposed to be full cylinders, but they're not. And every couple ones that you pick up, all of a sudden you go like this because it's empty and you're expecting it to wait. It's not only an opportunity, it doesn't only take time to move it. We're in a race against the clock. We have to get these things before they all leak into the atmosphere, which they absolutely will. So thank you for your comment.
There was a question over here. Yes.
Yes, for Madame Michel. You showed some pictures of fridges and freezers in your slides. So is the blowing agents in the foam is considered in the bags, and what are the opportunities for COPA to promote foam recycling, the foam treatment in the worldwide?
Excellent question, thank you.
Yes, foams are also included. It's also being addressed in the technology opportunities, technology solution working group, but it's one of the topics also being covered. So it's also considered in the graph that you have seen, but we're looking at foams and refrigeration and air conditioning.
Yes.
Second one, perhaps you mentioned the price of offsets that's on voluntary market. Well, you will tell me that also the price ranges, but are there tendency to go up, starting up and down? You find more friends by it?
So it is a market, and when we started out under the California program, there was a market that was tied to an increasing floor price for carbon allowances. So there was sort of a built-in mechanism that as you reduced the cap, the price of these offsets would go up. And I will tell you that in California right now, if you're doing a project like this in the United States, carbon credits are around $20, $21 per ton. In the private sector, they can go from as cheap as $2 to over $200, $300 if you're talking about some of the carbon capture sequestration technologies that are all the rage that people are very, very excited about. And it really, really does range. We are doing our best to help people see that these carbon credits should be treated as a premium There's a big emphasis on nature-based solutions. Those are great at Tradewater. We are an all of the above company. All of these ideas are great. But one of the things that's true about ozone depleting substances is that once they're released, you cannot bring them back down. There is no nature-based solution for the release of ozone depleting substances. So getting these now and preventing their release, we are trying to sell as a premium carbon credit that people will pay more than $2, $8, $9 for, because it costs more than that to do this work. And so we would love to see a world where the price of these carbon credits rivals what you're seeing in California. We think that's what it takes to do this work at scale. We're not there yet, but we are definitely on our way.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm gonna go over there and then come back to you. Yes, please.
ODS and responding illegal motive. And I'm not sure if it is also has a efficient therapy to national law for the carbon credit, because those is often legal trading, legal motive. And the other question is about if we have already have the preparation in Taiwan, then we need to destroy those sex ODS. This will have the additionality.
The additionality perceived?
Yes, yes. No. Sorry, your first question was if you have seized material, if we would be able to support this destruction? No.
We have already destroyed that.
You have already destroyed it?
Yes.
Okay.
We would like to have them.
Okay, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. So if something has been already destroyed, can it achieve carbon credits? And then is there additionality if there is a mandate to destroy?
So first of all, if there's a mandate to destroy, then the additionality disappears. And you cannot get carbon credits. This also comes into play with extended producer responsibility. So these are different ways of solving the problem. One is the government says you have to do this, but then of course they have to provide the money or make sure that they're enforcing it in a way that allows it to happen instead of people breaking the rules. Extended producer responsibility is another way, and then carbon markets are a third way of doing this. So you cannot have the carbon markets if it's already required by law that you do the destruction. In terms of whether you could get carbon credits from material that's been destroyed in the past, I would say the answer is probably yes. But in order to do carbon credits, you have to have quantification and certain proof of records and chain of custody. So the question would be whether the documentation and the steps you took prior to destroying it would be sufficient that an auditor, we call them verifiers in the carbon market space, could come in and say, yes, in fact, this refrigerant existed. Here was the chemical compound and makeup. It was destroyed according to rules and regulations, more than 99.99%. Yes, we can quantify the environmental benefit. So that would be the question, and we'd have to look at the particular situation.
And the question over here? Yeah, or comment? Yes, you.
Thank you. I didn't want to monopolize and take a second turn, but if nobody else. It was very related to what we just spoke about, which is illegal trade. And I think we've observed, so what we're talking about and what we're experiencing is, CFCs because of the nature of carbon markets. But as we consider the best mechanisms to avoid issues that already crept up during the CFC and HCFC regimes, in your experience, would there be value in thinking more creatively about what happens with the seized illegal? Whether it's illegal or legal with seized stuff that sometimes ozone officers on the ground struggle with without knowing what to do with it, and sometimes even because we have seen Customs and Borders Protection folks also struggle with whether they turn the ship back, whether there's something else. Are there ways to incentivize or think of mechanisms where they're win-win-win for everyone involved?
Thank you for that excellent question. I'd like to invite both of you to comment. Either one of you.
No, I think I pass to you or to the audience. I'm sure somebody has some ideas.
I would absolutely be, we think the work that we've done, the stuff in Thailand is over a decade old. Well, 2007, I think is, and prior was when this was all seized. And so this wasn't a thought on their mind. We consider that a win-win-win situation. But I think going forward, right, what should we be telling, customs officers to do when they seize this at the border? Who's going to take responsibility if it's such a burden to do that? And whether there's a creative solution other than, what we're offering. I think it's a great question.
Anybody else? We can take one more. No? Okay, we'll close right on time then. I want to thank our three panelists for your participation and presentations, including Dr. Punsak for connecting at such an early time all the way from Thailand. So thank you very much, Dr. Punsak and Gabe and Ellen, for your time and your insights and valuable knowledge sharing with the group. And thank you all for joining us and for participating. And we'll be around. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.